We see the news, we see the volumes, just like everybody else is, at least from the Cboe Digital perspective. There's quite a lot of assets that flowed, into the ETFs on the first few days, and quite a lot of volume. So, if you were looking at those stats, I would say it was quite a successful day and launch for those ETFs. And I think everyone wants to see how that ecosystem continues to grow. We're certainly watching it from that perspective as well.
This content is brought to you by Uphold, which is a great crypto platform that I've been using since 2018. Uphold has all the top cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and all the altcoins. In fact, they have 260 plus cryptocurrencies on their platform. You can also trade precious metals, stablecoins, and 37 fiat currencies. In addition, they are available in over 150 countries. And this platform is fully reserved. They do audits, so you can trust that your funds are safe, no commingling, no lending out your funds. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is John Palmer, who's the president of Cboe Digital. John was on the podcast last year, and boy, we have a lot to talk about, John. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And it's certainly been a busy start to the year already.
For sure. Let's start with Cboe Digital because I noticed that you guys launched margin Bitcoin and Ether futures. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We launched last Thursday on the 11th, and as you mentioned, it's margined futures. And so the important piece here is it's an intermediated product, right? So you have to work through FCMs to be able to access the market, which is pretty standard in the U.S. futures market, and it allows investors to use leverage and based on that margin. And so that those capital efficiencies and that ability to access leverage is really fantastic. And what this launch really has done is unified our spot and futures platform. So we have institutional customers that can trade now both spot, crypto, Bitcoin, ETH, and some other coins along with these futures on the same tech, dealing with the same company, with the same exchange and the same operational staff. So driving quite a bit of efficiencies or opportunity for those efficiencies for those customers. So we're really excited about that.
So John, with the launch of the Bitcoin spot ETFs, have you seen increased interest and demand for your products and services?
We've definitely seen growing interest. I really say over the last, really 12 to 18 months, right? So we've, post the acquisition of Cboe, of ErisX, now Cboe Digital, in May of 22, we really started to see, I would say, increasing interest really from that stage on. I would say, the Bitcoin ETF approval is a really important milestone for the industry. In general, I think we'll see participants start to engage in the market in a more increasingly manner over time. We have seen volumes, I would say, grow in the last few months leading up into the approval, and even after that. Some of that could be this interest, that engagement. Some of it could be the price action that we've seen. We've seen quite a bit of run in the price kind of leading up to the approval as well, and some really increased volatility around some of the news. And so all that we're definitely seeing increased interest. Could be from a number of those factors, but broadly, it's really great for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly historic, the launches of these ETFs. What are your thoughts on how the launch went and the current trading volume around those ETFs?
Right. I think that an important designation between Cboe Digital and Cboe Global Markets. Cboe Digital is we operate the spot and the futures exchange clearinghouse for crypto assets, but we're not involved in the actual listing or trading of the spot ETFs. That's Cboe BZX, which is one of our four equity exchanges run under the Cboe Global Markets umbrella. And so, we see the news, we see the volumes, just like everybody else is, at least from the Cboe Digital perspective. There's quite a lot of assets that flowed into the ETFs on the first few days, and quite a lot of volume. So, if you were looking at those stats, I would say it was quite a successful day and launch for those ETFs. And I think everyone wants to see how that ecosystem continues to grow. We're certainly watching it from that perspective as well. And whether it's inflows, outflows, trading activity, everybody's really focused on looking at those numbers and trying to dissect it. Obviously, from our perspective, the activity, the increase in folks that call it are paying attention to the space is a great thing. And so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. And what we've seen is some of these issuers have put out ads, and it looks like mass marketing is going to start. So a tough question here for you. Do you think we see a Bitcoin ETF Super Bowl ad?
That's a really good question. I would be surprised if we don't. One of the things there's quite a lot of choice that investors have in terms of what spot ETF they want to choose to access. And so the issuers are obviously competing for that same business, right? And they can compete in a number of different ways. They can compete on fees, they can compete in terms of marketing, they can compete in other ways. And so, I think we'll see the issuers continue to do that. I think we see quite a lot of marketing happen across the board in terms of other ETFs. So I would not be surprised to see increased marketing as the issuers compete for business into their particular ETF, and doing it in the Super Bowl, I think probably makes a lot of sense.
For sure. Now, do you feel we've hit a tipping point with institutional adoption of crypto? I mean, with these ETFs going live, you have so many players involved from Wall Street and much more. Do you think that, it's kind of a clear path now to just mass adoption of Bitcoin and crypto, given that these big players are here?
I don't think it's a light switch moment per se. I think it's a good step in the right direction, right? I think providing investors choice in terms of how they want to access this ecosystem, I think is really important. For investors that want to be very native into the industry and they want to understand how a wallet works, or whether they're doing self-custody or having another custodian hold their coin for them, they have to kind of do the research, and they have to understand what they're doing to really get comfortable. And for those investors, maybe they end up buying Bitcoin natively and holding it. But for those that maybe don't want to deal with having that knowledge or having that comfort, and they want someone else to do it for them, and they want something that they're comfortable with, that they're used to accessing, an ETF as a wrapper, as a vehicle to be able to gain that exposure, I think is a really interesting tool for them to use. They may use it to access a lot of other different types of assets, whether it's equity markets or it's other commodities like gold and other commodities that there's ETFs on. So this provides them something that they're used to, and I think that's really important. And so how we see the ecosystem grow, I think is great. Also, how the ETFs are able to function, I think, is really important. Right now, we've seen in the ETFs, it's only a cash redemption type of model, and in-kind redemptions aren't kind of supported or live yet. And so whether or not we're able to see that come to these ETFs might change the dynamics for the underlying spot market and how dollars in Bitcoin are exchanged and kind of move through the ecosystem. But until then, I think it's good just to see the potential growth in folks being able to access the ecosystem in a way that they feel comfortable. And I think that's really the win for the industry here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've already had some folks who, were not, or I should say they were on the fence looking at crypto. And now that they've seen these ETFs get approved, they're like, hey, can you tell me about that Bitcoin stuff again? And, should I invest in these ETFs? So the ETFs seem to be, kind of breaking down a psychological barrier. And like you said, bringing something familiar to these folks are familiar with from a TradFi standpoint. Now, there's talks of an Ethereum spot ETF potentially being in the runnings maybe this year, and different folks like BlackRock and others filing for this. Do you think we see an Ethereum spot ETF this year? Hi, everyone. Pardon the interruption. I'm Tony Edward, the founder and host of the Thinking Crypto podcast. I have a huge favor to ask you. If you haven't subscribed as yet on YouTube or the podcast platforms, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, hit the notification bell on the YouTube platform, and on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It supports the podcast. It allows me to bring great quality content to you. Thank you for your support, and I'll let you get back to the content.
I think it's a really great question. I think there's two pieces, right? We've seen some filings already, so there's already some kind of dates in the future that I think we can look at and say, okay, we expect to see potentially some information from the SEC on these existing filings and whether or not those filings need to be amended or they're changed, and that process happens as it did with the spot Bitcoin ETF. Time will tell. But one of the nice things that we've seen is we've seen a process that's happened, a back and forth between the regulators and the industry, and we've seen something successfully come out of it, something that's been launched, that's out there, that has interest. And so what that is it shows us a pathway to be able to bring products to market that might deal with the crypto industry, specifically at least Bitcoin. Whether or not we're able to do that with ETH, I think we have a good runway, we have a good path in order to kind of show us what we need to do. Call it dotting the I's and crossing the T's in order to get the regulator comfortable with the setup, the structure, the information that's in either the S1 or the exchange rule filings. And so I think the chances are higher, in my opinion, than they were before this approval. But each individual, kind of rule filing in S1 is going to be, looked at specifically and not in the context of, okay, we saw a Bitcoin spot ETF approval, we have to see an ETH spot ETF approval. I think we still need to make sure that, we're answering the questions, we're putting the information in front of the regulator that's needed. And as long as we continue to make that progress, I think it's a good chance that we potentially could see something like that.
Now, John, not everyone is a fan of the Bitcoin spot ETFs. We had Vanguard and Merrill and these folks come out and take a stance. I don't know if it's posturing or what's happening, but they're like, we're not listing this. And in fact, we're going to delist the Bitcoin futures products that we had on the platform. What are your thoughts on that? And do you feel that eventually they will capitulate?
I think this is obviously their business, right? And so they know their business well. They know what their customers are asking for and where the demand is and where they want to focus their efforts, as in any business needs to do. So, I'm not surprised. In general, I think they're going to look at an industry, at a sector, and say, is this our core business? Do we want to compete in this business, and do we see demand and customers that want us to compete in this business? And so as that changes, I think you see participants that are offering services, like ETFs and funds, change the types of products that they offer. Right now, there's more competition for flow. Right before, we only had the futures-based ETPs. Now we have a spot-based ETP out there. So now there's more choice, there's more competition, and so I think as we see the ecosystem kind of maybe the dust settle and it grow, we'll see what funds are going to continue to be winners, and what funds are going to continue to lag, and then those particular companies are going to have to make a decision on whether or not they want to continue to offer those products. I think that's general course of markets and product structure in general. From my perspective, if I was running a company, I didn't have any demand, or I didn't have anybody asking for something, it wouldn't really make sense for me to offer it. Now, if all of a sudden that industry was very successful and I had a bunch of customers say, "Hey, I would use this product if you offered it," then that gives me, at least one of the things internally in my mind that I would need to be able to think about bringing a product to market. So as that changes for individual companies, I think their focus and their offering will change with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, question for you with Cboe. Obviously, you guys have Cboe Digital. You offer these great products, spot futures, and so forth. Cboe, the main business, they listed a lot of these ETFs. Are you guys thinking of throwing your hat in a ring for your own spot ETFs, maybe related to Bitcoin or Ethereum?
So from our perspective, broadly, Cboe, we operate the markets, the exchanges, we have clearinghouses. We offer quite a substantial market data business for our customers and across the world looking to access data, on the exchanges that we operate. We're not an issuer, right? So we're more partnering with the issuers to be able to bring their products to market. So from our perspective, we're always going to work with our partners and work with the issuer communities to be able to bring new products to market, whether it's a spot Bitcoin ETF or a spot ETH ETF, or even any other type of ETF or fund that they're looking for, that they have demand on. And so that's where you think about the different places in the value chain that different companies operate in, we're truly focused on running those exchanges, operating trusted, transparent, resilient markets that our customers are used to across the globe, and we're going to continue to do that.
Tell us about your 2024 roadmap. Are you planning to support new tokens? Are you planning to build new financial products?
So Cboe Digital's focus, obviously, with the launch in January, just last week, of futures was something that we spent multiple years working towards. I think when I was on last, we were talking about the potential approval, and that was even before we had full CFTC approval to even be able to clear these types of futures. And so we're going to be focused on growing that ecosystem, right? Whether that's just expanding the products that we currently offer, or even offering new products that are focused on digital assets. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to go where our customers want us to go, right? So we're listening to our customers, we're listening to the trading community, the FCMs. We're saying, how can we best continue to grow this ecosystem in support of your businesses, and what's going to help you drive what your customers are asking for. And so we're going to continue to focus there, and that's derivatives. The spot market is the same thing. We currently offer 5 tokens for trading: Bitcoin, ETH, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and USDC. We're going to continue to offer those 5 coins, and we're going to continue to grow that market with our institutional partners as well, and continue to offer them a resilient and a trusted marketplace for them to access those tokens. And as we hear additional ideas or additional demands from our customers in terms of expanding that set, if and when we're able to see some regulatory clarity that maybe allows us to expand our offering, we'll continue to look at that and be focused on that. And so those are obviously our two, have been and will continue to be our two biggest focus areas in 24.
Now, recently, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink was talking about the Bitcoin ETFs and crypto and so forth. And one of the things he mentioned was that the next phase after these ETFs is tokenization. And he's talked about tokenization being the future of finance. Do you agree with that? Or is the ETF kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to financial products that can be built for crypto, and then the next step is indeed tokenization?
Yeah, I think there are probably lots of steps in between where we're at now and call it true widespread tokenization in financial markets. I think having a spot Bitcoin ETF and having more institutional investors be able to access it is a great thing. And I think what it does is it helps raise awareness to what the actual technology is that's powering what's underlying the spot Bitcoin ETF, which is Bitcoin, which then is obviously distributed ledger technology, blockchain technology. And so as we continue to raise that awareness and institutions and companies get comfortable with that technology, I think we'll continue to see strides being made towards this thing called tokenization. Whether or not 2024 is going to be an inflection kind of year for tokenization, time will tell. I think there's substantial progress being made across the globe on this effort, and I think it's really interesting to see projects starting to show some of the benefits that leveraging the technology that underlies Bitcoin or other types of coins brought into more mainstream financial markets in certain different ways really does benefit all parties. And I think we're going to continue to see more of that. And again, as we continue to raise that awareness, we continue to see those projects bring success. I think we'll continue to make great strides in that. I would agree with Larry that I do think seeing the merger of kind of what we call TradFi and blockchain DLT technology itself over time is going to continue, and a lot of the things that we do today and a lot of the systems that we are using today sometimes are 20, 30, 40, maybe even older than that in terms of years old. And so I think there's a really great opportunity for us to look at ways to leverage this new technology to drive efficiency really for all parties included. And I think we'll continue to see more of that over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about, and this is the final question here, the outlook for the markets. Obviously we're talking crypto, but crypto is impacted by global liquidity and money printing and look, the stock market, right? And I think all that is driven by global liquidity. But what is your outlook for 2024 and 2025? Do you think Fed cuts rates, they start the money printer again, and it seems we're headed in that direction, right? The 4-year cycle's playing out, the halving coming up. What is your outlook for 2024 and 2025?
Yeah, so I'm certainly not an economist, so I'm probably going to be wrong no matter what. I think from our perspective, we see 2024 as a potentially high uncertainty type of year, or what does that mean? It could be potentially higher volatility. I mean, we have a U.S. presidential election. There's quite a few global elections that are occurring throughout the year. You're talking about the halving that's also coming in April. So I think there's just a lot of macro items that could impact the markets, right? Interest rate cuts or interest rates not cuts. There's still a lot of TBD, as I'll call it, out there. And so, for that, I think again, our launch of futures is really timely. Investors are going to look to be able to hedge their risk and hedge that volatility should we see it increase. And so I think we're going to continue to see growth in derivatives, specifically U.S. Derivatives, and so we're really looking forward to be able to serve the community there. In terms of where price will go, I'm not going to try to guess because I have absolutely no idea where it is. But definitely, certainly, a lot of things for us to watch and a lot of events for the markets to digest that are upcoming in 24.
For sure. I lied. Not the final question because this popped in my head. We got a couple bills in the House. There's, I think, a couple in the Senate as well. Are you optimistic that potentially Congress can get things right this year? And, if we get clarity, specifically on the SEC side, is Cboe Digital looking to list, additional altcoins, maybe those that are in the top 20?
I think it's a great question. I think we have a presidential election. There's quite a lot of things happening, in both the House and the Senate. Whether or not we see a bill come out, I think there's always a chance, right? Whether it's a stable coin focused bill or a broad bill or something that happens, in the courts side of the fence that could provide clarity. I think, all of those are potentials. I think those are probably going to take longer than just 24, but we have spending bills, we have elections happening. So whether or not something that's specific to crypto and specific to maybe that clarity that I think a lot of folks in the U.S. are looking for, I would always say it could happen, but I would expect it to be post 24. But we're certainly watching everything, making sure we're prepared. And from our perspective, as I mentioned earlier, I think as and when we see clarity and we feel comfortable being able to expand, our product set or the tokens that we offer, and there's customers that are looking, institutional customers that are looking to access those types of tokens through Cboe Digital, we would definitely be interested in offering them when that time comes.
John, great chatting with you. Excited to see future updates around Cboe Digital, and congrats on the margin futures trading for Bitcoin and ETF launch. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me again. It was a pleasure.